South Park fans know that the town is filled with weird people who come and go, but some of these disappearances are much deeper than others. They involve people who were part of the core family units of the show. And I'm not gonna lie, seeing a sister or a brother just fade away is pretty dark. The show moves fast and does not look back at the people it leaves in the wreckage. This deep look into the missing cast will show exactly who is gone and why the town does not care. It is time to look at the people who are no longer walking the streets of South Park. Pip Perup was a character who was there from the very beginning. He was based on the main boy from a famous book called Great Expectations. In the first few seasons, he was one of the kids who talked the most. He was polite and spoke with a British accent, which made him a target for bullying. The other boys always made fun of him and called him names even though he was always nice to them. Pip even had a full episode dedicated to his life where he went back to England and dealt with robot monkeys. It seemed like he was going to be a main character for a long time, but as the years went on, Pip just started showing up less and less. He went from being a kid with lines to a kid who just stood in the back of the classroom. Eventually, he did not even have a desk in the school anymore. The show found a new kid named Butters who was also nice and got bullied, so Pip was not needed anymore. The way he finally left the show was very mean. In the 200th episode, a giant monster version of a celebrity stepped on him. He was crushed into the ground and died instantly. The crazy part is that nobody in the town even noticed. There was no funeral for Pip and his friends did not cry for him. It was as if he had never been part of the group at all. He had been on the show for over 10 seasons and then he was just a red spot on the sidewalk. This shows how the creators handle characters they do not want to use anymore. They do not give them a happy ending or send them to a new school. They just remove them in the most violent way possible and then act like they never existed. Pip is the best example of a character who went from the spotlight to the trash. Basically, the town of South Park has a very short memory when it comes to dead friends. Shelley Marsh is another character who has mostly disappeared from the daily life of the show. She is the older sister of Stan and she was a huge part of the early episodes. She wore a giant metal brace on her teeth and she was always very angry. She would beat up Stan and his friends and call them turds all the time. She was much stronger than the boys and they were all afraid of her. Shelley was a constant threat in the Marsh house and her rage was a big part of the comedy. She even had boyfriends who caused trouble for the family. However, as the show started to focus more on Stan's dad Randy, Shelley began to fade away. The episodes became more about weed farms and Randy's crazy ideas. Shelley was still there, but she stopped having her own stories. She would just sit in the background and look mad while her dad did something stupid. In the newest seasons, she is hardly ever seen at all. It is like she is being phased out of the family. Stan and his mom rarely talk to her or mention what she is doing. She's becoming a ghost in her own home. This is a strange choice because she was such a strong character for so many years now. She represented the annoying older sister that many kids have in real life, but now, she's just another face that the show does not know what to do with. The creators seem more interested in Randy's adventures than in the sibling dynamic between Stan and Shelley. If she disappeared completely tomorrow, it is unclear if the show would even explain where she went. She might join the long list of people who are no longer part of the South Park world. What most people do not realize is that family does not mean much in this town. Ike Broflovsky is Kyle's little brother and he is a very famous character. He is Canadian and was adopted by the Broflovsky family when he was just a baby. For a long time, he was a major part of the show and had many episodes where he was the hero. He was a genius baby who could use computers and even went through puberty in one episode. He was always around to help Kyle or to be kicked like a football, but recently, Ike has started to vanish from the screen just like the others. In the early seasons, Ike was in almost every episode that featured Kyle's house. Now, there are entire seasons where he barely shows up. When he does appear, he usually does not say anything. He's just a silent baby in the background. This is a big change for a character who used to be so important. It feels like the show has run out of baby jokes and decided to stop using him. Even though he is still technically in the show, his presence is much smaller than it used to be. It is another example of a family member being pushed aside. There was also an original idea for Kyle's family that involved a different kind of brother. In the very first versions of the show, things were a bit different, but once Ike was established, he became the main sibling. Now that he's fading away, it makes the Broflovsky house feel empty. Kyle does not play with him anymore, and their parents do not seem to worry about him. He is just a Canadian kid living in a house where nobody pays attention to him. It is a quiet kind of erasure that happens over a long period of time. Things get even crazier when you think about how many kids in the school have just stopped talking. Principal Victoria was the head of South Park Elementary for 18 seasons. She was a very stable character who was always there to deal with the crazy things the boys did. She had a very specific way of talking, and she was involved in over 100 episodes. She was a breast cancer survivor and was one of the few adults in town who actually tried to be responsible. For almost 20 years, she was the face of the school. Then in one episode, she was suddenly gone. She was fired for a joke she did not even make. She was replaced by a new character named PC Principal. This new guy was a giant change for the show, and he became a main character immediately. But the way Principal Victoria was handled was very cold. She did not get a big goodbye or a reason to stay in town. She just vanished from the school and was never seen as a regular character again. She had a small cameo later where she was living in a different place, but she was basically deleted from the main story. It was a very harsh way to treat someone who had been on the show since the first season. The town did not seem to miss her at all. The teachers and the students just accepted the new principal and forgot about the woman who had led them for 2 decades. This is one of the most realistic but cruel parts of the show. It shows how people in a workplace can be replaced and forgotten in a single day. Principal Victoria went from being the boss to being a nobody. Her history with the town was wiped out so that the show could move in a new direction with a different type of humor. It has been missing for years, but her influence on the school was once the only thing keeping it together. Dr. Alphonse Mephisto was a very important character in the first few years of South Park. He was a mad scientist who lived in a big lab on a hill outside of town. He was famous for creating animals with multiple butts, like the 4-assed monkey. He was the person the boys went to whenever they had a science problem or needed a DNA test. He was even at the center of the mystery regarding who was Cartman's father. For a long time, it seemed like he was going to be the main scientist for the entire series. But after season 4, he almost completely disappeared. The show changed from being about weird sci-fi stuff to being about social issues and politics. Dr. Mephisto did not fit into that new world, so he was left behind in his lab. He would show up for a tiny cameo every few years, but he was no longer a part of the town's life. His lab, which used to be a major location, was rarely visited again. The character who was once the key to the show's biggest mysteries was now just a forgotten relic of the past. The disappearance of Dr. Mephisto marks the moment when South Park grew up and left its original weirdness behind. The multi-assed animals and the cloning machines were replaced by jokes about the news and celebrities. While the show became more popular, it lost some of its charm by getting rid of characters like the Doctor. He's still up there on his hill, but for the viewers and the residents, he's basically gone. It is a lonely end for a man who used to be the smartest person in the room. He was a pioneer of the town's early chaos who was silenced by the change in tone. Everyone is obsessed with the new characters, but the old lab on the hill is still standing empty. Officer Barbrady was the only policeman in South Park for a very long time. He was not very smart, and his catchphrase was telling people to move along because there was nothing to see. He was a big part of the town's identity in the early years. He even had an episode where he had to learn how to read. But just like Principal Victoria, he was eventually pushed out of the show. A new group of police officers was introduced who were much meaner and more realistic. Barbrady was fired and became homeless in one of the later seasons. The way he was treated was heartbreaking for many fans. He was a bumbling but nice man who was suddenly forced out of his job and left with nothing. The show used his exit to make a point about how the police are viewed in the world, but it still felt like a betrayal of a classic character. He went from being the law in South Park to being a man that nobody would look at on the street. He still appears in the background sometimes, but he never speaks and he never wears his uniform anymore. He is a shell of the man he used to be. Other characters have met similar fates. Miss Crabtree, the loud bus driver, was eventually taken out of the show in a very violent way. The creators even made a joke about how she was a character that nobody would miss. It was a very meta moment where the show admitted that they were eliminating someone because they did not want to write for her anymore. This kind of honesty is what makes the show unique, but it is also what makes it so brutal. They do not care about the history of a character if they are not funny anymore. They will just delete them and move on to the next joke. I'm not gonna lie, the graveyard of South Park characters is much bigger than most people think. There are so many other people who have vanished. Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh was once a huge star with his own songs and toys, but after a controversial episode, he was sent away on a bus and never allowed to come back. Satan was a recurring character who had a complex love life and even fought for the town, but he was taken out by a man-bear pig and went to heaven, never to be seen again. Even Chef, who was the most loved adult in the show, had a terrible ending where he was turned into a monster and then removed from the world. The thing is, South Park is a place that moves at the speed of light. If a character cannot keep up with the new trends or the new style of humor, they are gone. It does not matter if they have been there for 20 years or 20 minutes. The town is built on the idea that everything is replaceable. This creates a strange feeling when you watch old episodes. You see all these people who used to be important and you realize that they are now just ghosts. They are the residents of a town that has forgotten their names and their faces. The mystery of these disappearances is not about where they went, but about why we stopped caring. The show teaches us to laugh at the erasure of these people. It turns their disappearance into a joke about the nature of television. We are missing a key detail if we think these characters will ever come back for a happy ending. They are part of a cycle of creation and destruction that never stops. South Park is a world of the now, and the people of the past have no place in it. They are left in the void of forgotten ideas and old scripts. So here's the deal. The town will keep growing and more people will vanish into the mountain air. The halls of South Park Elementary are filled with the spirits of kids who used to talk. There were characters like Bill and Fosse who always called things gay. There was Damien, the son of the devil, who was a main kid for a whole episode and then never spoke again. There was even a girl named Heidi who was the most important character for 2 seasons and now was just a silent face in the crowd. These kids are still there, sitting in the classrooms, but they have been stripped of their voices and personalities. It is a very weird thing to see a character go from having hundreds of lines to being a silent statue. It makes the world of South Park feel like a simulation where the data for certain people has been deleted. They still have a shape, but they have no soul left. The show uses them to fill up space in the background so the town does not look empty. But for those who have watched since the beginning, it is hard not to notice the silence of these once loud kids. They are the leftovers of stories that the creators are done telling. This silence is hands down one of the most interesting part of the show's history. It shows how the writers focus their energy on only a few people at a time. The rest of the town is just there to react or to stand in line at the grocery store. The people who disappeared are a reminder that in the world of satire, relevance is the only thing that keeps you alive. Once you lose your edge, you lose your voice. And in South Park, losing your voice is the same as disappearing forever. The hallways are quiet because the stories have moved elsewhere. What most people do not realize is that the background of your favorite show is a cemetery for ideas. The thing is, I wonder if all this happens overnight or if characters slowly fade away until they're gone. Is it possible that the town is actually changing, we're just not seeing the exits? Are we missing a key detail about how these people are removed from the world? Maybe they all moved to the same place where forgotten cartoon characters go to live out their days. It's a crazy thought, but in a town like South Park, anything's possible. Basically, the residents are just moving through a world that does not care about their past. The mystery of the missing cast is a big part of what makes the show so dark and funny at the same time. It challenges the viewers to see if they are paying attention. It asks us if we care about the people we have been watching for decades. Most of the time, the answer is no. We just want the next big laugh and the next crazy story. The disappeared characters are just the price we pay for a show that never stays the same. They are the sacrifices made to keep the comedy fresh and the town moving forward into the future. Does the sudden disappearance of so many classic characters make the show better, or just more heartless? Like and subscribe for more deep dives into the weird world of animation.